See it on your forehead? No, I mean, you got the screen.
And you just have lines.
You got a big T on the forehead.
Hey. Call the meeting to order. I want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Upper Smokeman Indian Band. A motion to adopt the agenda. So moved.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McLean, second by Willis. I do have an addition for 11.1 new items. It's the handout I gave you guys. All in favor of the addition? So moved, thank you. Adoption of the minutes, special meeting of council, recommendation that the minutes of the February 17th, 2022 special meeting of council be adopted.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Seconder, Councillor Gould. Any errors or omissions? All in favor?
I was,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, I didn't see
I
your
was
hand.
just going to ask on the special meeting of council with those, the minutes are, sorry, item 6.2, the grant needs. I believe that one of them was a subject, like subject to,
It wasn't in the motion.
it was just in the discussions.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yep.
Subject to them becoming
I already
registered.
checked, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Can we, okay.
no, you'd have to remake the motion.
We would have to remake
Yep.
them. Yeah.
Any other questions?
And that, the pickleball was referred to recreation, does that mean staff,
Yeah.
the budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Nope, that's good
Okay,
now.
all in favor? Carried, thank you. 3.2, regular meeting of council, recommendation that council adopt the February 22nd, 2022 regular meeting of council agenda. Motion, Councillor McLean, seconder.
Second up.
Councillor Willis, any errors or omissions?
Are we not supposed to be adopting minutes?
What did I say? I meant minutes. Sorry, I meant minutes.
I meant the minutes, and I'll second that.
It's already been seconded.
McLean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Councillor Willis already seconded. Okay, all in favor? Sorry. Petitions and delegations, we have a presentation tonight, so it's all yours.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me here tonight, and Carrie for arranging this presentation. My name is Maren Luciani, and I am the owner and the senior planner with Meraki Community Planning. We are located on the unceded traditional territory of the Shwetnik people in Kamloops, and I own a small full-service community planning firm. You may or may not have heard of us before, but most of our work is with smaller communities and First Nation communities, and we're really excited to be working with the town of Princeton and Carrie and her team on this project. So thanks again for having me tonight. I can't see any of you at the moment, so if you have questions or comments, just please shout out during the presentation. This isn't meant to be overly formal, but just to give you a bit of a progress update on where we are as far as the OCP refresh project is concerned. So just quick agenda items. So I'll give you a quick progress update on what we've completed thus far. Some of the key findings or interesting sort of facts that we've identified through the development of a community profile, which I believe you received as part of your council packages. Maps associated with the community profile are in the final stages of development, so those are coming soon, and will also be posted on the website for community consumption as well. So I'm going to focus predominantly on the community engagement component of this project tonight, and hopefully get your blessing to proceed with that. Your role as far as community engagement is concerned, and there's just quickly some next steps in the project work plan. have we done so far? We've done quite a bit. Obviously, the flooding slowed us down a little bit. We did try to keep going behind the scenes to do what we could to keep the project moving along. We're a little bit delayed, but not substantially. We did have an initial staff workshop, which was really helpful to get the staff perspective on sort of where you are, where you're going, and their thoughts in terms of, you know, what they're hearing from the community on the ground on a day-to-day basis. We followed that up by doing a community tour with staff, so we got a really good feel for your community, some of your future growth areas, some of the issues and opportunities within the community from, again, the staff perspective to set the stage. We did a mini active transportation assessment on the Wood Bridge, so we physically visited the area, and we spent some time. We spent about 2.5 hours assessing the Wood Bridge from a land use planning perspective. So I know you've done a little bit of work on the engineering side in terms of assessment previously. This was part of a grant that the community received that was associated with the OCP, specifically related to active transportation. So this is a component of the OCP, or will be a component of the OCP, but Woodbridge was also determined as a priority area for future attention from an active transportation perspective, where improvement could be made. We developed the communications and engagement strategy for this project, so we like to do that up front to ensure that we have a dedicated plan of attack for engaging and communicating with the community to ensure that we're reaching as many people as possible, that, you know, everybody has an opportunity to participate, and we have some targeted goals and objectives as far as the engagement is concerned. So that's sort of our tracking or our roadmap as we move through the project to make sure that we do say what we do what we said we were going to do. That also serves as a bit of a template that can be used for future projects in the community. So if you have another major project coming up and you know you need to do some dedicated communications and engagement with the community, you can use that strategy as a template and adapt as needed. We have been working on updating the existing OCP mapping, and we have a couple additional maps that we're working on as well that will likely be integrated into the OCP. Those won't be finalized until sometime after community engagement, because most of the mapping we'll be looking for input on from the community as well. We developed the community profile, which I mentioned already, which is really meant to be a guiding document as well and inform the update to the OCP, also provide community with a little bit of information prior to engagement to help spark more meaningful input. We have done some growth management planning based on what we know today, and developed the sort of first status quo, we're calling it growth scenario for the town of Princeton. I'll chat a little bit about that tonight quickly. And we just recently had a second staff workshop to discuss the community profile. So here we are tonight. Here's our overall schedule as far as the project is concerned. Now, like I said, we're a little bit behind, not too behind. We've adjusted this accordingly. We did start in the fall of 2021. We're finished the background and technical analysis stage, prepping for engagement and all of that. We're looking to move pretty quickly now into the first phase of community engagement, which is why we're here tonight, and hoping to have that completed by early April, so we can spend the later part of spring updating the OCP. There'll be a second phase of engagement. I'll go into more detail about the engagement phases later on. There will be a second phase of engagement on the draft plan itself to make sure we got it right. And then fall, winter 2022, we're anticipating final housekeeping legislative reviews and a public hearing and hopefully adoption of the updated OCP. So some of the key findings or data, I guess, that we compiled as part of the community profile. This is really just a snapshot. I don't want to spend a lot of time tonight on this. You do have the community profile to review if you haven't already. But again, these are just some facts or findings that will inform the updated OCP that we think are fairly important, many of which you probably are already aware of. So Princeton is no different than most BC communities who have an aging population. This is really a Canada-wide issue, and certainly important from a land use planning perspective. Princeton has a lower median household income than the regional district and also the province. So your median household income is 5,000 less than the regional districts and actually 18,000 less than the province. We also know that there's been this mass migration from urban centers to smaller BC communities, and not necessarily seeing that at the moment in Princeton, but could that potentially be the case if supply of housing was available. So on the housing side of things, we know there's a housing shortage. There's generally an older housing stock in the community, particularly in the town center, and rising house prices is obviously a trend not just in Princeton but across BC. So as far as the housing shortage is concerned, we understand that there's an issue in terms of housing, particularly for short and long-term employees of the manufacturing sector. So a very specific population that perhaps needs to be considered in terms of planning and the OCP specifically. And a shortage in rental housing specifically. There's a 0 to 1% vacancy rate for rental housing in Princeton, according to the housing needs assessment that was done in 2020. Mostly single-family homes within the community. The town is certainly affordable in comparison to a lot of other BC communities, but obviously costs are rising, and attraction to these smaller communities from urban areas also impacts affordability for those that are already living there. Overall, we've seen an overall upward trend in building permits as well. 2020 had a bit of a decrease from the year prior, but we're thinking that possibly due to extreme weather events or extreme weather events that year, 2021. On the economic side of things, obviously a heavy reliance on the manufacturing sector within the community. A lot of people employed within that sector, a lot of good paying, high quality jobs within the manufacturing sector, warehouse or BC Green, mine in particular, being major employers for the community. Again, housing being an issue for attracting employees to the community. We understand that there are quite a few vacancies, but finding housing for people to live in the community has been a challenge. Tourism sector seemed to be on the rise according to census statistics pre-COVID, also according to your visitor center statistics. Again, possibly COVID put a wrench in that trend, but we may possibly see that come back post-COVID. Always difficult to predict what's going to happen post-COVID. Limitations to the tourism sector also, again, with regards to accommodation shortages. So something to consider in terms of the OCP as well is there an appetite for short-term vacation rentals, and how do you balance that with the need for the long-term rentals for, say, those within the manufacturing sector? Environmentally, I don't think we can argue that climate change is a reality. Obviously, you've been impacted by recent extreme weather events, as have several other communities in BC. Wildfires of 2021, and obviously the recent flooding event in November of 2021. What can we do about that? We can certainly look at strengthening policy in the OCP, and aligning the OCP with existing plans and strategies that you have in place related to climate change mitigation. So you have an excellent wildfire mitigation strategy, and there's a floodplain assessment report as well. So those are just two of the plans that we're looking at in terms of review and integration into the OCP. So moving along, like I said, we have done some analysis related to growth management. This is a key component of the OCP. We're looking at strengthening this section within your OCP, and including a little bit more in terms of, direction as far as future growth across the community is concerned. This will also be a very important topic to engage the community on. So whether it's within the community survey that we're currently working on, or virtual workshops that we'll chat about in a few minutes, this will certainly be a central topic of engagement. As you probably are all aware, there's been a fairly steady increase in population from about 2006 to today. We expect that the trend will likely continue. So we looked at several potential growth rates, starting with what we're calling a status quo growth rate, which was identified through the DCC bylaw project. So that growth rate was identified at 0.72%, and that was based on census statistics and also the housing needs report that was created in 2020. We're calling that the status quo because we think that it captures sort of growth quite well to date. Now, whether or not that considers what the community is going to look like 20 years from now, that sort of left to be seen. But we wanted you and the community to start thinking about the potential for a slightly more aggressive or alternative growth rate, given that we know there are some trends related to migration. Perhaps they're just associated with COVID and that's going to slow down, but perhaps that's the way of the future. Certainly, as mentioned, Princeton is affordable compared to other communities or larger centers across BC. There is still land available, and it provides a nice quality of life for those that enjoy, the outdoor activity type mountain lifestyle. So starting with a 0.2% growth rate, what we could anticipate in the year 2042, which is our 20-year OCP planning timeframe, is an added population of 471 people. If we look at, slightly higher growth rates and, from 1% to 1.5% to 2.2%, you can see how those numbers increase. So something to consider as we move through this project. So what does this mean from a housing count perspective? So if we use the status quo 0.72% growth rate, then we're looking at adding 227 new housing units by 2042. So 227 houses from now until 2042 under a 0.72% growth rate. So given that status quo scenario, low density single family housing to date has been the most predominant housing type established within the community. So again, if we just look at status quo and keep that as, you know, the bar from now until 2020, probably looking at about 178 new single-family homes versus just over 40 medium and high-density residential homes combined. So if you look at the map here, which we developed roughly based on land available, based on potential boundary expansions based on servicing available or servicing constraints. This is roughly what we end up with if we are continuing on with the business as usual approach. So you can see that most of the residential growth is happening in the northwest sector compared to 0.1% growth within your town center. So when we think about the possibility of an alternative growth scenario in 2042 and whether or not we need to potentially consider this within the OCP, you know, gathering input from the community on their thoughts and what an alternative growth scenario might look like, or whether the status quo is sort of the way to go. Here's an example here if we were to use the alternative growth rate of 1.5%. So not a lot of additional growth, but let's say that, you know, your supply starts to, or the balance starts to tip in terms of supply and demand, and you're building more quickly than you were in the past. We know the demand is there, so under this growth scenario, you go from 227 homes to 321, so 94 more homes under this growth rate by the year 2042. This still considers that low density single family housing is the priority. But again, this is something that we would like to engage the community on during this first phase of engagement, and really find out, you know, what if an alternative growth rate is desired, what does that look like? Whether it's a higher growth rate, potentially more growth in core areas, densification and diversification in housing type, or balanced green field and infill development. So again, just food for thought and leave you with this before we move on to the community engagement component. If the supply catches up with the demand, what can we anticipate over the next 20 years? So given what we've talked about so far, I've summarized some of the themes that we'll be looking to the community for their input on during this first phase of engagement. Their input, again, will help inform this updated draft of the OCP. So future growth, certainly a big theme in this first phase of engagement, active transportation planning, economic development, verifying that the existing OCP vision resonates with people still, or if there's any tweaks needed there. Tourism and vacation rentals, housing, hazard planning, climate change, and so on. So what does our engagement program look like? We basically have 3 phases of engagement, although the 3rd phase is the legislative public hearing. While this is not a comprehensive review and update of the OCP, we do still feel it's necessary to go above and beyond the public hearing, the required public hearing, and provide other opportunities for the community to be involved. So the first phase of engagement is what we're calling our vision and values phase. So we have a few different ways that the community can participate, and really what we wanted to make sure is that we provided opportunities for people that are able to participate in a sort of one-time formalized group opportunity, but also those that may not be able to do so, perhaps have busy schedules, but still had an opportunity to participate. So the first phase of engagement includes a community survey. That will be available in both hard copy and digital. So again, accommodating people that are digitally or technologically inclined and those that aren't. We have two community virtual workshops. We've moved away from the in-person to strictly virtual in terms of the group opportunities, just to be mindful of the public health protocols around COVID. We have a stakeholder virtual workshop as well. And we also have a targeted opportunity for the Upper Similkameen Indian Band, who we have reached out to and are in conversations with in terms of what that might look like for them. We also thought it might be useful to have a pre-recorded presentation, so similar to what will be presented at the virtual community workshops, that people could click on the website and review at any point in time, and then fill out either the survey or a short comment form after watching the pre-recorded presentation. In phase 2, which will be after we've drafted the updated OCP, so after we finish engagement in phase 1, we'll compile all the results, we'll put together a summary of the results, which will be available to you and publicly accessible as well. We'll start drafting the OCP in the 2nd phase of engagement when we're ready to engage on the draft plan. Similar approach to some degree. We will have a community survey. We'll be doing the legislative referrals at this stage, and we'll have an audio-visual guide as well, somewhat similar to the pre-recorded presentation in the first phase, for people to walk through on their own time and fill out either the survey or a comment form. One thing that I didn't speak to in the first phase is we are launching a design contest as well. So this will be an opportunity for anybody that would like to share their artwork, whether that's photographs. We have some already that have been gathered from the community, but we'll be looking for more. Whether it's paintings, drawings, anything that we could potentially incorporate into the final OCP to really make it a Made in Princeton approach. We have prizes for winners, and again, those that are selected will also be highlighted in the OCP itself, given recognition for that. The final phase of engagement, like I said, is basically the legislative public hearing. So just taking a closer look at the first phase of engagement, like I said, there'll be 2 digital workshops, 2 general sessions for community. One will likely be in the morning and another one in the evening to accommodate different people's schedules, and one stakeholder session. So we have been working closely with staff to create a master stakeholder list for any and all groups within the community that we might want to send targeted communications to, who might like to join this specific session with us. And the community survey, so online and also hard copy, a design contest, and a pre-recorded presentation and a comment form. And finally, the Indigenous engagement, which is still to be determined. So just quickly with the design contest, so I believe this poster and also our general poster is going to be highlighted in the local newspaper for the coming weeks. So hopefully everybody is tuned into that. The contest is really for people of all ages and skill levels. So we do encourage, younger kids to get involved as well. This is a great way for them to integrate into this process. The poster could even be distributed to the school as well. Deadline for submissions is April 30th. And like I said, there will be prizes for participation as well. And how people can get involved. So we have created a web presence for this project. We'll be updating that as far as dates for upcoming community engagement is concerned. It's also a source of background information. Like I said, the community profile will be posted there. That is planned for launch tomorrow. And the web link is on the screen there. We're distributing posters around town using Facebook and Voyant to get the word out. There will be project articles and ads for events in the spotlight, as mentioned. Princeton staff will be available to chat with anybody that wants to speak one-on-one. The phone number is there for that opportunity. And of course, there's a email address, and for those that are a little bit more traditional, if they'd like to write in with their comments, they can certainly do so as well. So we'll be gathering all the input from staff and considering that as we move ahead. So what is your role in the process as far as communications and engagement is concerned? Probably not much different than your existing role. But we really encourage you to spread the word within the community, amongst your family and friends, your networks. Encourage as many people to participate as possible. The more people we hear from, the better. And really act as a sounding board for the community and funnel any input that you receive through to staff. And finally, of course, reviewing the draft plan, providing your feedback, and adopting the plan and the bylaw at the end of the day. So just wrapping up here, next steps is just a bit of a roadmap in terms of where we are and where we're going. So just finished a staff workshop last week. We're at the council presentation today. We're looking at launching initial communications on the project tomorrow. We're hoping to launch the first survey on March 14th, so keep that date in mind. Right now we're on track for that, and that'll run for a few weeks. We're looking at implementing the other forms of engagement, for example, the workshops between now and early April, so we'll be announcing those dates very soon as well. Community engagement results will be compiled likely sometime later April, and drafting the OCP around May, June, and looking at our second engagement phase around August, September. So I hope I haven't taken up too much of your time tonight, but again, I thank you for the opportunity, and I would be happy to take any questions or comments that you may have.
Thank you, Maren. It looks great. Council have any questions? Councilor McLean.
Maren, I just had one of curiosity. Years ago, we compared Princeton's population with the regional district, and we were quite a ways younger than almost every community in our regional district. And I guess the aging population description is good. At least they're not dying, they're just getting older. But I find it kind of, from the perspective of, in the last few years, we've had an enormous amount of industry come to Princeton. The mine expanded, the mine came and then expanded the different industries that we had, and then the BC Green and all that sort of thing. I can see that probably the numbers coming up from, from the bigger centers, retiring, those obviously are gonna be more aged. Maybe that's what balances off, but I guess it did kind of surprise me when I thought with all, 400 people working at the mine, 400 at the mill, and then all the other industries, probably another 200 or 300, and yet we're called an aging population.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, and I apologize when I put together this presentation. I try to just pull a few sort of stats from here and there. But if you do look at the community profile, you will see that there is, that pointed out as well, that sure, you have an aging population, but you also have a young population on the rise. So that is identified as a community profile, and that probably should have been on the slide tonight as well.
I guess one of the questions they asked when the mine came in was what was the biggest difference I noticed in Princeton as the mayor at that time, and I told him my biggest difference was the number of carriages going down the streets with babies in them.
Oh, wow. I bet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much, and community profile looks amazing. Thank you for all the work you've done so far. I look forward to the end result.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, with that, I say thank you, and we're going to move on. So, let's move on to the next item, which is council reports, and I'm going to start with Councillor Elliott.
I really have nothing to report.
Okay then, Councillor, Councillor McLean.
Well, I thought it would be appropriate to give a little bit of a wind up from the perspective of our community Princeton Posse Club. As far as I'm concerned, it was a great season in terms of the objectives that we had to put up with in terms of COVID and injuries and whatever. I was proud of what we did achieve against, I guess, the best club in the entire 2019 team league. We held our own, and so I was happy from that perspective. I need to, as president of the Princeton Posse, I need to thank municipal council and staff. This is a community team, and if it wasn't for the municipality and the staff of the town, I'm not sure we would have a team. The other one, of course, is you can't do anything without fans, and we had a great season. We had a couple 300-person games filled to the brim with people. Of course, I have to thank all the volunteers. Again, they all volunteer their time, and as a result of that, cut down our costs and make it possible to have a junior hockey club in a town our size. I need to thank the head coach, Coach Reedman, assistant coach Mason, and general manager Mark McNaughton. I guess it just, on behalf of the board, it's just, I think a tribute to the community that we, you know, I, I remember when this was brought to me back when I was mayor, and I went, are you kidding me? You think we can have a team in this town with the number of people we have? And I wasn't gonna say no, so we tried it, and here it is. We're coming up to our 20-year anniversary, so prove me wrong. But anyway, again, thanks to everyone that helps make it possible. Like I said, if it wasn't for the community input and cooperation, we wouldn't have a team. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Willis?
I gotta agree with what Randy says, but I think we gotta help, thank Randy. I think he forgot himself in there. I don't think there would be a team without Randy, so, you know, there's a lot of work he does, every game day, so thank you, Randy, and, good job, Posse. I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting last week, and that's where.
Excellent. Councillor Gould?
I have nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Okay. With that, I want to personally thank the Princeton Posse for everything that they did for our community this year. This year's been a challenging year, to say the least, or this past season, I guess I'll say. But when, you know, when we were in our, you know, hour of need, the members of the hockey club came out and they sandbagged endlessly, and tirelessly, and anything we asked, they ran to, and they did, and I want to thank them personally for that. We owe them a debt of gratitude for that. And in the same breath, I want to thank Coach Dooner for bringing his team down from 100 Mile, and working with our team, and just showing that you know, that bond is still there, and it's wonderful. So although they didn't make it through to the second round, I think they did one heck of a job this year, and I want to congratulate them, and I want to, you know, just say that they'll always have a place in our community. So thank you. I don't have much else to report more than last week. It's same old, same old. We're still trying to get housing. We're still trying to get funding. We're still trying to get all that stuff happening. I did meet with the vice president of the Red Cross for BC and Yukon. Maureen and I met with him and two members of his team and the regional district's recovery manager. Not much came out of it. The initial housing supports will end at the end of March, and they will be going case-by-case basis after that to try to help people in the situations that they're in. We don't know what that looks like at this point, and we did voice our concerns. We voiced our concerns about whether or not they were going to remove their case managers from the community, because initially we heard that the case managers would all be going online or over telephone, and we voiced a very strong opinion that that would not be adequate or appropriate for our community, as a lot of the people that are still impacted don't have access to, whether it's a cell phone or a computer at this time. So they did make we'll see if it comes through. They did say that they want to put a management team on the ground in Princeton to work with our people, and they committed to that. So hopefully that'll ring true, and we will have case managers in the community to work with evacuees going forward. But very frustrating. We did voice our concerns also over the lack of communication from the Red Cross to the community, and the speed in which their frontline workers received information, because we were receiving information in this office before it was passed on to their frontline staff. So we would go to the resiliency center and we would say, "Oh, this is happening," and they would say, "No, we've never heard of that, and that's not what's happening," and they thought they were leaving. So so we brought that up as well. So they were going to work on that, and they seem committed to working with our community, but time will tell. Yeah, it's still a long uphill battle, I believe, so, unfortunately. Okay. We'll move on to the next one, correspondence action requested. We have a request that we participate in the Kermias Rodeo Parade on May 23rd, 2022. And the recommendation is that council attend the Kermias Rodeo Parade on Monday, May 23rd, 2022 as available.
I'll make that motion.
Council McLean, Council Alex, going to second it? Are we volunteering as well to go?
If I'm available, I'll go.
I know I'm working.
We'll figure that out. Any comments, Council McLean?
We don't send the fire truck anymore?
No, Councillor Elliott and I took the bylaw truck last time.
Oh. We always used to get a little ribbon for that fire truck when we put in.
We got one for the bylaw truck.
Oh,
we
I
did,
think
yeah.
I think they,
Perfect.
I think we're the only municipality shows up, so we get a ribbon for coming.
That's probably a lot safer for the fire.
Participation ribbon.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll go down to new business. There was a handout on your desk, and it's regarding the price of gasoline. So the piece of paper reads, as the price of gasoline increases due to global instability and the impact this will have on rural BC, we are looking to the province to ensure that rural BC stays competitive and sustainable. Rural BC depends on trucking to supply our communities with the basics of life, and we depend on our personal vehicles more so than urban centers. Unlike urban centers, rural communities do not have mass transit, putting them at a disadvantage when the price of gasoline spikes over urban communities. Therefore, we ask that the province of British Columbia suspend the carbon tax until global oil prices stabilize and postpone the April 1st, 2022 increase. Get a motion?
Make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Willis. Seconded, Councillor McLean. Any questions or comments?
I wish there was more we could do about it.
Yes. Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. With that, we go to 12.1, motion to close.
If I
Yep.
may, I had a couple questions.
Yep.
Was a point I wanted to make to staff, that just to thank them for the bins that are spread out in the streets. It's unbelievable how helpful those are. There's no big mess when you have problems, and I think with my rental house, I think I'm as far along as anyone, and yet we're constantly throwing out gyprock and stuff and all that kind of stuff. It's so handy. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. The other one was a question, and I think it's an unfair question, but it's to Councillor Willis.
I was gonna say, don't look at me.
Is it possible to give, from your perspective, you handle, sales, house sales and buying and selling and rentals and all that stuff. Is it possible for you to estimate what the number of people working in our community that are living out of town as a result of either lack of housing or price of housing?
Yeah, it's a hard number to really.
Yeah.
I think a lot of more people have than before. And then 5 years ago, I think there was more people that were living out of town and renting. But
I think staff might be able to give an idea on that, because BC Stats has us at 3,000, is it 2,000? 208. It's a rise of 100 people over last year on our statistics. But our census has us at what, 28 something? So the difference is, we believe that the BC Stats are using the actual tax roll in town rather than the actual number of people living in town. So we believe there's roughly 400 people. We work out to almost 350 people.
During our stakeholders meeting with some of the larger industries, when the question was proposed to them, they said between 10 and 12% of their employees are not living in Princeton because they don't have a place to live.
Okay. It's just, for your constant drive of housing and everything else. It's just a,
Yeah.
a booster of why we need to keep working on it.
Well, and that's what we sell to any developer that walks through the door. We know right now that we have huge demand. We know that there's people living here that aren't, well, we have those numbers from the industry on our last meetings with them. So we know roughly what industry needs to be able to fill those jobs in town, plus fill the jobs that they can't fill at this time because of the lack of housing. And that's substantial. I think we're around 100 homes roughly just immediately to fill job postings that are currently unfilled. So we've got a long way to go, and I think we're on the right track with everything that we've been doing and whatnot. And the carriage house and the secondary suites is going to help with some of that rental pain that we're experiencing. And but we are contending with still a migration from the Lower Mainland and other places where people are selling their homes for a lot down there and they're moving up here, or they're able to purchase up here where they can't down there and they can work remotely. So people are still moving here, and that's putting that extra strain on it, because as a house, as I'm sure Councillor Willis can attest to, as a house comes up on the market, it's going for above asking because people are so desperate to get into a house and they want to move here from somewhere else, then they're willing to almost do anything to get those homes. So
Yeah, I get more calls from people not working, not at the mine or the mill, or, just moving up this way. And, a lot of Vancouver people, they're just buying here just because of the pricing.
And I thought it was an interesting point from the tourism perspective that I know in organizing different things like spring camps and all that kind of stuff for sports, that it's almost impossible because all the motels are full of transient workers, not transient workers, but just people that can't find a place to live, sort of thing.
exactly, and our tourism industry is actually kind of suffering right now because they can't find those homes either, because it's about 300 jobs right now currently filled by.
About 280 jobs from a study I had done.
On what jobs are available and that are currently filled, but there is a demand still for, and that's in tourism, and there's still a demand for those positions to be filled. So we do have a lot of vacancies in jobs. I mean, our unemployment rate is lower than the average, and but we do have more job vacancies than a lot of communities do as well. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we'll go to motion to close. Recommendation of the meeting be closed to the public for the purpose of considering the following 90.1E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land and improvements, if the council considers the disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality.
Make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gould, seconder. Councillor McLean. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And with that, I say good night to everybody.